Hey guys. Sorry, my cameraman's making me laugh. So is anybody wondering where on earth is Mrs. Isham? I am sitting in my parents' camper. This is my new office. Welcome to my new office and my new classroom. So Isaac and I were just talking before I started filming this video about these lovely, handsome guys right here. These were three big debaters in Congress at the time that this whole debate is happening. What's going to happen with all these new states? How do we keep the balance on the teeter-totter between the North and the South? Well, Henry Clay was of the mindset that, you know what, no matter what, the most important thing is to keep this nation together. John Calhoun was like, you know what, you don't like what the country's doing? We have the right to break away and form our own country. Daniel Webster said that compromise was necessary to keep the Union together. These three big guys were huge voices in Congress. So we have another problem coming in 1850. I'm going to write the words here kind of small. Compromise of 1850. Right before 1850, we have another big problem because California grew so fast right before 1850. I bet you can guess what happened to make the population grow so stinking fast that the country, or the state that was barely occupied, all of a sudden had thousands and thousands and thousands of settlers. Oh yes, the gold rush. So the gold rush happened. California suddenly has enough people to form a state. But the question is, are they going to be slave or are they going to be free? Now, California actually wanted to be a free state. So this was a big debate because all of a sudden the South is not happy. There's going to be one more state on the North teeter-totter side. And so this is the compromise that they came up with. Now, this compromise is complicated. I don't want you to get lost in it. I'm just going to explain all the parts, but then I'm going to put arrows to the two fingers that are the most important. So California wants to be free. So I'm going to write that first. A free California. There's 5 parts to this compromise, which is why Mrs. Hicks and I make it a hand. So they want to be free. That's a big part of it. Another big part of it is popular sovereignty is going to be allowed in some of the Mexican cession areas. And the rest of the states that are going to be there, we're going to have Pop-Sov. So popular sovereignty is going to finally decide, as long as the North agrees, as long as California can be free, we'll let popular sovereignty decide in the rest of those areas. Now, I'm going to go backwards on the fingers now. There's a couple little parts to this. Like there was still a debate in Texas and New Mexico about where the border was supposed to be in Texas and New Mexico. So this actually had a provision in it that decided the border officially, so those two states would stop arguing about where their border was. And then one other thing that the North really wanted that the South was willing to give in on in order to get popular sovereignty in the rest of the states was they were going to ban slave trade in Washington, D.C. Hopefully you can see that. So banning the slave trade in Washington, D.C. was huge because you might remember that 20 years after the Constitution was signed or ratified, they actually banned slavery coming in, or slaves coming into the United States, but they still could buy and sell slaves everywhere. And so this was going to ban the slave trade in the actual government seat of our country so that that wouldn't be happening there. And the North really wanted that. So the South is happy with this, the popular sovereignty. I'm just going to write South with a smiley face. The North is happy over here with a free California. The North is happy with banning the slave trade, okay? But this one finger that I have not written down yet, this one is huge. It is actually something called the Fugitive Slave Act. Now we talk about it like it's its own law because it is. The Fugitive Slave Act became a law when the Compromise of 1850 was passed. So really quickly, I'm not going to put this one on this card. I'm just going to put the other major events on the back, and then we're going to make a separate card for the Fugitive Slave Act. So, big parts of this one. First of all, California is a free state. Slavery was going to be banned there. Second, the Fugitive Slave Act was going to happen, but we're skipping it. Third, the slave trade was banned in in Washington, D.C. There's actually a comma right there. The fourth one was that the border problem was solved. And if you need to know the states, you can look on the front. It's Texas and New Mexico. And then the fifth one was going to be that there would be popular sovereignty. I'm going to write Pop Sov in the rest of the Mexican cession. And by the rest, I mean every place not California. So when those territories gained enough of a population to become states, the people there would be allowed to vote. And that comes into play soon, next week, when we talk about more events. Now, I want to talk about the Fugitive Slave Act as a card all by itself, because this was a huge concession that the North made. They gave in on this one, and it was not a good thing. The South was only willing to accept California being a slave state because of that popular sovereignty thing and because of the Fugitive Slave Act. And this was an awful thing for Northerners who were against slavery, because basically this said that if you were from the North and slaves escaped to your area, you were required by law to return them to the South. This meant that people from the South could go up into the North and arrest African Americans that they thought were slaves, take them back to the South, and sell them back into slavery. So this was a negative thing for the country, in my opinion. Sorry for the bias there, but I hope you agree. So people had to return escaped slaves. So this made it a lot harder for slaves to escape. And there were some stories of people who were free. There was a Northern African American called Solomon Northrop. He was actually captured when he went into a city on some business. He was captured by slave hunters. He was taken to the South and sold into slavery. And he was kept in slavery for 12 years before his family from the North finally legally got him out of slavery. You might have heard of the movie 12 Years a Slave. Well, the reason that was possible, that's a true story. The reason that was possible is because of this Fugitive Slave Act. So did people go against it? Sure. But the penalty for going against it that made some people follow it, even though they didn't agree with slavery, was jail time and a $1,000 fine. Now, $1,000 today is bad. You know, if you go somewhere you're not supposed to and buy mulch when you're not supposed to in Michigan during coronavirus, you can get a $1,000 fine. But then $1,000 was way more money, closer to like $32,000. So this is a huge fine that most people couldn't afford, along with jail time. And that was why the Fugitive Slave Act made the South happy and the North not very happy.